Welcome to the Debrief.
Your no-nonsense look
At the critical talent topics shaping today's landscape.
no scripts.
No sugarcoating.
Only spicy takes, just real insight from across the industry.
I'm Ben Sesser.
I'm Chris Abbas.
I'm Tracy St. Deek, and this
Is the Debrief. Welcome back to the Debrief. Today we're talking about what it takes for TA leaders to become AI native. More than 90% of organizations have deployed AI in talent acquisition, but fewer than 5% report transformational outcomes. AI is delivering real efficiency gains from screening, reducing time to hire, and improving quality of hire, yet most organizations are adding AI to existing processes instead of changing how they function. At the same time, 82% of HR leaders plan to implement agentic AI within the next year, and recruiting workloads continue to grow. In this episode, we're exploring what TA leaders need to prioritize to become truly AI native. Where should they invest first? How do they prepare their teams for what's next? And what does it take to build a AI native talent acquisition function from first principles? So I'm going to kick it over to Tracy and Ben. We've got a lot to say, I'm sure. Let's go.
I'll kick it off. And I feel strongly about this. I think it really comes down to two things, but focusing on the TA leader specifically. I think the TA leader needs to hold a vision for how they're going to completely redesign the hiring process in light of AI from the ground up. Like break it down to its core parts, figure out what are the things I really need to know, and then build it up with AI in mind. So much so that you can't pull the AI out of it, as I like to say. I think a piece of that is also rethinking lines outside of the silos of TA. Like I'm lucky that in my role at Zapier, I get to lead a lot of talent initiatives. I'm about to take on onboarding as well, formally. And so I'm already starting to think through how do we break down those silos and have a real vision for just talent in general at the organization. I think if TA leaders are just thinking about talent acquisition, you're very quickly going to be left behind because I think all those lines are going to be blurred really quickly. So I would say holding the vision is number one. And then the second thing that you all know I feel deeply about is AI fluency, specifically for your team and building an AI fluent team. But I would say for a TA leader, it is incredibly important, I'm just saying this more and more, to become AI fluent yourself for a few reasons. One, you can solve your own problems. Like you can solve your own friction points as a TA leader that only you know. But I think the second thing is in order to actually craft that vision of how you redesign the factory, as we like to say, or rebuild how hiring is done, you have to understand more like concretely for yourself how AI works, what confidence you have in it, where it doesn't work, what slop looks like, what is good, what guidelines you would give your team. You have to be like in the weeds, hands on keyboard, figuring that out for yourself. And I think that's when, at least for me as a leader, I've unlocked the most creativity, what I'm actually building myself and working with my team to build. So that's where I would start. But Ben, what would you add or subtract from that?
You gave my entire answer. No,
Perfect.
I was going to say,
I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the term AI native in general, like if we talk about AI native platforms or AI native software, it, generally means like it's born in the age of AI, right? It was like spawned when AI was in existence. And so everything was built around the technology as opposed to the other way around. And yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, in terms of how you described kind of an AI native function. It's kind of the same concept. It's, rethinking things from first principles. If you were to build things from scratch today around the technology as opposed to, trying to retrofit the technology to, what's in existence. So yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't really have much to add. That was a really good definition.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Tracy's saying. And I think that to go kind of level down from that, and I actually think like each individual department's executive team needs to be hands-on, right? Because I think thinking about each department on its own, I think limits the effectiveness of AI. I think that the way that AI is going to be the most powerful in organizations is stripping the whole business back to first principles. And what do we need to kind of use as a business? What data do we need to collect? What do the workflows need to be? What are the systems that we need to use? And I think that can't be done in your individual departments because then you're going to have all these kind of offshoots of different tools and platforms and ways of working. So I think the executive team needs to be incredibly aligned and also very hands-on, as Tracy was saying. And I think that more than anything, just to know, how they need to work. I also think that as a CEO, I try and be hands-on with each department and understand how they work, but I'm never going to know the workflows as closely as the people doing it and the leaders in that role. And I think that is a very important thing to have the most granular level of detail on, because the thing that's going to stop AI being effective, in my opinion, is the friction that's created in the workflows. Like why a salesperson won't do X, Y, Z to collect the right data and keep it refreshed and keep it updated, why a recruiter won't do that. So I think people that have the empathy for the role and the understanding of the role, coupled with that deep expertise or hands-on ability with AI, I think that's the superpower. And I think personally, my tolerance for leadership not doing this is like almost at zero. And I think that we're looking at our OKRs right now for a business, and we're calling this like the critical transformation quarter, going from old talent pool to new talent pool. And we're going to say this is what old is, this is what new is. We have to be at new by the end of this quarter, and if you're not, that's a performance issue. And I think that my level of urgency on this stuff is just increasing.
Yeah.
You guys work with companies, that are utilizing AI, whether it's implementing the tools that you work for, Zapier, BrightHire. What is the general consensus that you guys have on where the average company sits in terms of AI fluency? Is it like most people, like, beginners, like medium, advanced? Like, what are you seeing?
I can use like broad brush definitions. And Tracy, I know you talk to a lot of your peers, so you probably have a good sense, but I would say I would define most of tech and high volume. And I'm looping those together because tech companies are generally tech forward, and high volume hiring environments have been I would say generally tech forward for a long period of time, just by necessity, right? Like at least insofar as automation. I would define the middle of the bell curve as being heavily leaning into AI tools is what I would say. And I would say, outside of those segments, I would still say the middle of the pack is probably adopting AI tools. So maybe not leaning heavily, but adopting. And at one end of the bell curve is business as usual, kind of doing it the same way they did 5 or 10 years ago. And on the very other end of the bell curve would be these incredibly automated high volume and hiring environments where it's touchless, or, you're hearing the phrase talent engineering. That at this point, I would still put it top 5%, top 3% of the market. We can get into that later. So I don't know. That's my broad sort of strokes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you in terms of where we are. If we took a snapshot of where we are today, I think the middle of the bell curve is people who are utilizing AI, but maybe still utilizing it in one-off ways where they're not necessarily all connected together, or they're not thinking about entire workflows, but they're using AI in their sourcing tool, and they're using AI in their ATS, and they're using AI and this to create job descriptions. And maybe they have an all-in-one tool, but they're just using AI on top of things they've already done. And so, yeah, I would agree with your assessment. I would actually pull back a little bit and say, based on where I think we need to go, I think most TA teams are super, super early on, even if they are adopting at the middle or top of, that spectrum. Even at Zapier, I would say, and we aspire to be on the leading edge of this a little bit, but I would say we're maybe a 3 or 4 out of 10. And that to me represents how much further I think there is to go. And that's only with what I can see right now. I know that there is so many more opportunities to redesign what we're doing and be more AI native right now. And I'm sure in 6 months, I will see even more opportunities, and the goalposts will keep moving. But I think the data pretty much reflects what I see in practice. More than 90% of organizations have deployed AI somewhere in TA, but fewer than 5% would describe those outcomes as actually transformational. When I talk to TA leaders, I think that gap is real. Adoption is real. People are using the tools. They're moving faster on individual things, but the function itself hasn't changed. And I don't yet know a TA team that could actually legitimately call itself transformational and AI native yet. I have not met the person, or I have not met that team. We are not that team. We are aspiring to be that team, and we're taking steps towards it. But I think I haven't seen anybody reach that point. I think the good thing though is that the bottleneck isn't technology. The research points to adoption challenges and governance gaps and data readiness. And those are all organizational problems, which I think is better news because the technology will continue to improve. But right now, the organizational problems are really solvable. So teams can start to get there more quickly with a strong vision and strong AI fluency.
Yeah, if Tracy's a 3 out of 10, we're all screwed, I think. So I think that what you're saying, and
I'm like, what is a 10 out of 10 in that world? It's like, it's like my recruiters live on a space station off Mars, and
they mind calls.
They have a Neuralink chip. They control everything.
I'm gonna date myself. I'm picturing like a scene from Minority Report where they're like wearing a headset in front of giant screens, and they're.
You're not dating yourself in this group. I loved Minority Report.
So the general consensus, I think, both that data sits with what we see, and we just did a bunch of events, and we got people to rank themselves on like where they think they sit on like data fluency, and the vast majority, and these were some of the best companies in the world from a tech perspective and the most advanced from an external perspective, but the majority marked themselves as beginner, right? So I think that is kind of lines up with what you guys are seeing. So kind of translating into how that is actually being effective, what I'm seeing in my own company and when I speak to others is what Tracy said. It's speeding up tasks that we're doing. We can get rid of a bunch of admin. We can provide a better candidate experience because we've got more time, whatever it might be. But translating that to hard outcomes, I think still hasn't really happened in the majority of cases. For example, is that leading, where are you spending that time? What's the outcome? Is that better candidate experience leading to higher offer acceptance rates? Is it leading to a faster time to hire? Can you now make 3 hires a month instead of 2 hires? Like, what is the actual outcome of all this efficiency gain? And I think that I'm not seeing that yet be like fully articulated by a lot of companies. So I wonder what you guys are seeing in terms of the biggest ROI you're seeing and what the use cases are there, and kind of how you're thinking about this generally.
I think there's so much further that we can go for actual ROI, which will touch on improving efficiency, but also quality and also the employee experience or even the stakeholder experience, candidates, interviewers, hiring managers. I think to see real ROI from AI and TA, that was a lot of acronyms. That was a tongue twister. I know, just letters. To really see that ROI in AI, I think that you have to be hitting on all 3: efficiency, quality, and stakeholder experience. Now, if I got really concrete about what I'm seeing right now, I would say the most obvious cases for AI use cases delivering strong ROI are the ones that are actually saving money for a company and tooling, but are also better. So things that give both consistency, which is important for risk as a TA leader, I appreciate that, and also personalization at scale. So consistency is the foundation, personalization is really the opportunity. And then I think that those are the 2 things where you're really seeing ROI, because it's both giving you something that you might not have been able to do before. You might not have been able to personalize and tailor every communication, every thoughtful exercise for every single candidate, but you also need to keep consistency in your process to have a strong quality of process. So I think those are big ones. I think companies that have, like we have at Zapier, where we've built our own tools and we've been able to eliminate third-party tools, that is actually just literally saving dollars on a budget line. That's super defensible for your CFO to be like, no, we saved $30,000 on this because we built it ourselves. So those are the obvious things. And I think different teams are seeing, different versions of that on their own if they're building themselves in particular.
Most companies they don't either have the insights or the rigor to measure in a fine-grained way all the outcomes maybe that would demonstrate impact. But the companies that hire at a higher volume are much more capable in that regard because they're very accustomed to it.
If folks needed to focus all their resources to kind of a small selection of things to really become AI native, what would those things be?
I have 2 answers to that. I think internally, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, I would focus on AI fluency for your team. I think a lot of that can be built internally. So it's not necessarily a budget line item, but it is a real resource constraint, right? You need to carve out time to have protected space for your team to build, to experiment. I mean, you all have heard me talk about it at Zapier. We have protected hours every few weeks where our whole talent team is building together and not doing their day jobs actually. And that is a real opportunity cost to the business, but that investment compounds, right? Because a recruiter who can build the solution on their own is much more valuable than, just having to go out and find an engineering or IT talent to do it for us, or to go out and buy another tool. And so you can't really outsource AI fluency. It has to live inside your team. And the resource that you have to invest there is often time and enablement, and the cultural change management. So that's one. I would say if I was going to spend budget on something, I would be is this budget? Is this not budget? I would be interested in figuring out new ways to assess people. And again, this is going back to the analogy that's still stuck in my mind about how are we moving from an interview to an audition in terms of evaluation, so that we can understand right away and in a genuine and authentic and accurate way what a candidate's skills are, what their technical skills are, what their subject matter expertise is, but also how they would fit with the company, how they would add to the company. And so the candidate can also figure out how we would be a good fit with them. There's so much that can happen if you start to think about moving from this audition, we just ask questions back and forth, to let's do actual work together and let's do an audition, so to speak. But I think that there's probably technology that needs to support that. I think there's probably ways that can become efficient and at scale. I don't know what those are yet, but that's what I would be pretty obsessed with figuring out.
I had a pre-prepared thought on this question, because I did prepare, and my first bullet was a lot of what Tracy says. I swear, I just knew.
Wow, I'm really carrying the show here today.
It's hard being a thought leader. Just no. I think everything you said, educating on the art of the possible, instilling. I think I think what your team has done well, Tracy, is a mentality. There's a mentality of, why not solve for this once and for all? Why not blank? And I do actually think that that's maybe one of the most important things to get right, because if somebody has that mentality, maybe they don't actually have the fluency to go do the thing yet, but they'll go do it, right? They'll figure it out as a result. And so I think my answer is actually hiring the right people. Actually, that would be the first thing I would do. Make sure you have the right people to thrive and make your team successful. So creativity, obviously, it's nice if someone has technical sort of fluidity or comfort, at least, or curiosity, and kind of a prototype, test, iterate mindset, all those things. So my answer is the right people.
Yeah, I think my point of view, going back to what we said earlier, is total alignment across your executive team on what the expectation is from them. And then also a company plan of how you move from stage 1 to stage 2. And that's looking at kind of all the workflows from, if you scrapped your company tomorrow, how would you rebuild it? And what the plan is to get from one to the other.
How did you do that? Do you mind taking a second? I'm curious, high level, what was your...
So what we've done is we've got each leader to map out the workflow of their team, right? From the typical stuff that they do in, accounts receivables, in management accounting, in recruiting, sourcing, coordination, in sales. And then we've looked at what the data is that we need to collect at each of those points. And the next step I was going to say is, what is the minimum number of systems that can effectively capture that data? And we're trying to consolidate everything. The ideal would be one system. Now, that's not possible in most companies, but I want to get as close to one system as I can. And I think that is, what we're aiming for as a company. Now, we're probably going to be nowhere near one, but the nirvana is one. And so moving towards that. And then I think the third thing is, companies have been historically very, very good at external tools, and that's been the sexy thing, to build external products for customers. This is the time where companies need to get incredibly serious about internal tooling. And I think that they have to invest heavily. They have to make a decision. Am I going to build this and build a team to do the work that I need them to do quickly, and a high quality team to do that? Or am I going to go and find a partner that can get me there? And I think that needs to be a very deliberate decision, because you can't be in the gray area in my point of view. You have to decide what you're going to outsource, what you're going to insource. But I think it's typically too complicated for people to be doing it ad hoc. And it's too involved and too important that I think you need a focused team to do it internally, is my opinion. So they're the steps that I would take if I was, I am taking, and I would recommend everyone else do that. So I could be wrong, but yeah. So I guess to kind of come to a conclusion here, like, what do people think about, the cost of waiting? Like, is AI really as serious? Is it going to be as big of an impact as people think?
I think there's a huge cost of waiting. I would almost say to any executive, like, you're too late, but that you can still get up the curve really quickly. I think the thing that doesn't get talked about enough is that this isn't just about who in the next 12 to 18 months is going to be able to move faster. The teams that are building now, they're building the skills, the workflows, the governance, the data infrastructure, like we talked about, the shared libraries of what works. They're actually accumulating institutional AI knowledge that's going to compound. So 12 months from now, the team that's been doing the build days every 3 weeks, who's been iterating on citizen development and calibrating, their AI fluency rubric and bringing in everybody at a certain level, right? They're going to operate at a categorically different level than the team that spent 2025 and 2026 watching and waiting for other teams to figure it out and then hoping that they can just buy those tools. You can catch up fast now. You cannot, the gap between what it will take to catch up, it's going to become wider and wider. You can buy tools. You cannot buy the organizational muscle of knowing how to use those tools. And to what we were saying earlier, the mindset, the approach, the behavior, the orientation, and how to use them. That is something that, goes back to like basic change management as a people leader, but like that is organizational muscle and habit and practice that you have to start building now. And if you're not doing it, yeah, you can get a super cool tool in a few years, which by the way, will be outdated 6 months later, but you could do that. But if you're waiting, then the implementation of that isn't even going to be as powerful for you as a team that really understands their workflows. So that's what I would say.
Here. I don't know. I guess one other thing I would add is there's a talent attraction and retention part of it as well. Like, I don't know, at a certain point, if you're a super laggard, people are going to be like, well, I don't want to work there. That's like not setting me up personally for success in the future, and or my day-to-day work will feel incredibly antiquated and clunky and all the things. So you're going to actually have a hard time attracting probably like the top tier talent into the business itself. Among other issues, if you're kind of like on the sidelines or generally a laggard, like just people are not going to want to be in that environment.
Absolutely. I mean, the question to ask yourself is like, how much of a lead do you think you have against your competition? Is it 5%? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? And how much are you willing to give up? And I think that is a question companies should ask themselves, because I do think that AI might not, I'm becoming increasingly sure that it's not going to just replace like the whole workforce. And, but I do think it can massively accelerate a company in terms of their output and their efficiency, and then knock-on effects of growth and revenue and all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to have a massive impact on OpEx, because I think a lot of the operating costs that companies have are typically administrative. And I think that will be massively reduced, and there's going to be a lot of leverage there. So, if your company has better cash flows, if they're growing faster, like, what does that mean for you? And I think that's the question that you need to ask yourself. And then the classic spicy take here, we got to do the spicy take. So what is everyone's spicy take on this? I don't even know if I have one. Actually.
You start. I was going to say you start.
God, I can't start.
Well, I can do one. I think this is a spicy take. I was just thinking about this idea of like, being AI native and I don't think this is tangential. I think this relates to the topic. But I was thinking about teams like doing stuff or whatever. It's still hard to build good AI software, is my spicy take. I think that there's like a lot of performative AI adoption out there. People like, I vibe coded Workday in 26 minutes and I'm running a Fortune 100 company on it. Like, YOLO. And then you kind of read that stuff and you feel really bad and, you're really behind, or you feel like you should be doing stuff along those lines, or vendors that like could barely build regular software before being like, but our AI stuff is hot and, it's amazing. Or a vendor being like, we were founded in January and we can do everything for you and it all works great and it's super deep. Like, there's a lot of like performative stuff out there. And so I think that that's my hot take in that, one, like there's a tendency to feel like you're such a laggard and you're so far behind because you haven't vibe coded Workday, and you're still using an actual piece of software. But, I think like you have to take that stuff with a grain of salt. Like even we see it, we look at the way people are doing software development or what have you. And you're like, gosh, we're not doing that yet, but then you have to like really take a hard look at it and understand like, what is the context in which that is happening. And, are you lagging quite as far as behind as you feel like you are? It's good because in the sense that it applies like pressure and you want to move faster, but you also need to sort of like look at it with a skeptical eye a little bit.
And I've been kind of soft on this actually in my own organization. Is like, I want to be like considerate that people have a lot of work and they've got to like we can move slowly with like adoption. And, I think maybe you have to move to a more brute force position eventually. And I think that will be uncomfortable for a lot of companies, whether it's implementing a new tool and driving adoption, whether it's changing workflows, whether it's rethinking your whole business. You're going to have to take some uncomfortable periods of time and make people uncomfortable for a longer term goal. And I think that is going to have to happen because no one likes change. No one likes changing their habits. People are entrenched in recruiting. They've done the same thing for 50 years and followed the same process. So, changing that is hard and you've got to be prepared for that, I think. I'm slow to come around to it. Tracy's been doing this forever. She's been like, we're not hiring anyone that doesn't hit this bar. Go away.
You're out. No, but also yes. Okay, my spicy take. Okay, I'm gonna have two. One is specifically for the heads of TA out there. You cannot outsource your AI fluency to your operating team. Like if you need hands on keyboards, and I think Chris, you really agree with me on this, is like, I don't care if you have a 10-person, a 5-person TA team, if you have 10 recruiters, if you have 100 recruiters or 1,000 recruiters, if you as the leader of the talent team are not yourself experimenting and trying to build. You don't have to be the best builder. I'm not the best builder on my team. I have talent engineers who are way better than I am, but I at least can hang with understanding how the technology works and what it can do for us and the possibilities that are out there because I prioritize now spending time building alongside my team. If you are not doing that, you are doing yourself a disservice. I think you're cutting your own like career trajectory off at the knees in some cases in the future. And I think you're just not going to be able to be creative in terms of having an actual vision. So that is my strong, spicy take. The other thing I will say that I keep coming back to is that my team is exhausted, but they're also on fire at the same time. Like they are both stretched, but they're also doing things they couldn't do 6 months ago. They're solving their own problems without waiting on a roadmap, and they're building. And to me, for right now, that's the version of AI native that I actually care about. It's not the tools, it's not like the demos, but whether your people feel like they're doing more of the work that they became recruiters to do, that they're solving their problems, they're taking out the toil, they're solving their friction points, and they're actually having fun doing the stuff that they love doing and why they became a recruiter in the first place. So for right now, that's the goal. The tech is how we get there, but that is the ultimate goal at this moment anyway.
Love that. You just got me thinking of do people re-interview at a leadership level to be AI native? It's like
I think we should. I did this exercise with Brandon. I had him re-interview me for my job about 6 months ago. I was like,
I'm still here.
I'm still here.
I have a wild forward thinking thought. Tracy's like, yeah, I did that last Thursday.
No, I think we all need to be on our toes. Like, I don't think we can assume like I've been at this job for 3 years. I'm still the right person to do it. This is a new world. And I think that all TA leaders should be kept on their toes, myself included. So I said, Brandon, I was like, I want you to re-interview me for my job. And I want us to I want to put forth my vision for this team and see if that's aligned with where you think we should go. And we were. And that's why I'm still here. It's happier. But I think everybody needs to not take anything for granted or become complacent. And that includes saying like, oh, I'm going to outsource this to my ops team, or like, my recruiters will do this and we can just keep things the same. I think you have to keep pushing personally.
I love that. So for all those leaders listening, if you feel too comfortable, just go and re-interview for your job. Make the do the Tracy. I can't believe you did that. That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, on that note, thanks for listening to the Debrief, Of course, if you like the episode, hit like and follow to make sure you never miss a future episode. More hot takes, real talk, and talent insights coming your way next time. So tune in and get the debrief.